Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Please welcome a security awareness advocate, Jelle Wieringa. Let's dive in. Welcome, Jelle. Thank you for being on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So let's dive right in. Jelle, to the best of my knowledge, you are what they call a security awareness expert. Define that and dive in a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. I've been working in IT and cybersecurity for nearly 20 years now. But about 15 years ago, I realized I was mainly dealing with the technology side of things, which is great. We need technology, right? But we also know that having proper cybersecurity is done through technology, people, and processes combined holistically. And what I noticed is that if you look at the industry at large, 9 out of 10 vendors are focusing on the technology part. And there's not that many that focus on the procedure or the people part. And I figured I wanted to change in my career. And I decided I want to focus on the people side more. I want to really help people make better security decisions, because that's what it's all about, changing their behavior. So I switched to the company I work for now, KnowBe4, and I focused on how can we motivate people? How can we provide them with all the tools they need and all the knowledge they need to make that better security decision, to actually not only get some knowledge about cybersecurity and what they can do, but actually practice it in real life. So change their actual behavior. That's where the term security awareness expert or advocate comes from.
Okay, interesting. So you were a little sort of bored of the tech, or not rather bored, but it just seems to be what everyone was doing, right? And you wanted to sort of attack the same problem from a different angle.
Yes, it wasn't really bored. It was more, I came to the realization that technology, you need technology, right? You need mitigated measures that can be automated because, simply put, you don't have a choice. You need to make your life as a security practitioner easy, and technology provides that. But I also realized it's not everything. It's technology sometimes is treated as the holy grail, right? We have an issue, ransomware, cool. So we'll put an anti-ransomware device in. Yay, technology will save us. And that's not how it works, because if we look at the number of successful attacks out there, I always knew it was a large number, but when I joined this company, I learned that 70 to 90% of all successful attacks don't start with technology. They don't attack your firewall or anything like that. They attack the people, because the people, we as humans, they often call us the weakest link. I don't like that. I think that the most vulnerable is a better word, because vulnerability you can act against. Weakness is very hard to act against. And if you teach people, you decrease their vulnerability. But so I see that people are the most vulnerable part, and 70 to 90% of all attacks target that vulnerable part. And nobody was really doing something against it. So when I was looking for a change to a different company, I really wanted to work on that side of IT security, the people part. And I found that in KnowBe4.
Yeah, so I guess it's a little sort of similar to the healthcare industry, right? Where sort of everyone is focused on what drug to give you to make you better, when they really should be focused on prevention. Which what it seems to me is like the same sort of stance that a security awareness training takes, though. Fundamentally, the kind of difference is that usually when you have conversations with people about their own personal healthcare, they're sort of switched on and they're interested and like, okay, this is going to like affect my life. I should take this seriously. But as soon as you mention cybersecurity, people's brains just sort of tune out. So what's the best tool you found to combat that sort of problem?
Well, I think that most people tune out because, that's general for IT, I think, is we in IT tend to make things very complex from the get-go. And it's also a bit of a dogma that surrounds IT, right? People, when they hear the word IT, they think, ooh, that must be complex. That must be something that's hard to understand for me as an average Joe. And then we come in with IT security, which is, look, that's even a niche within IT. It's even harder to understand. that's why people switch off. So for me to get the conversation going, I try to focus on a dialogue, and you do that by making people understand how it affects them personally, not just their business, but them personally. And you make them understand that, well, it's not that hard, right? The basics of what we do in order to protect ourselves, everybody can learn this. It's not some fancy device that costs a lot of money that you have to implement, or some really complex procedure you have to do. No, it actually starts with understanding yourself, how to detect those threats and how to react to them. And that's something that you can do, I can do, my kids can do, who are 9 and 11, and they're taught this in school already. But also my grandma can do this. And you focus the conversation very much to the maturity level of the person on the other side, right? You recognize it. If you talk to a CFO, look, he's interested in making money for the company and making sure that that money is well maintained and that money works for the company. So he thinks in risk in a different way than an IT admin that just thinks, look, I have a gazillion tasks to do and I don't have the time to do it. That's a totally different perspective. But they both have to deal with cybersecurity on the same level, because if one of the two doesn't cut it, well, the organization is at risk. The thing that just is that with the CFO, you have a different conversation about the same topic. And that's the thing, understanding your audience, showing empathy, and then relaying the message to them in their language. For me, it works really well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, sort of customizing the message to the audience to which it will be delivered has a huge impact on the end result. Although I fear, like, at least for Gen Pop, right, especially grandma, for example, right, I think those people are so vulnerable and risk so much every day, right? So if you're a company, you know, there's like you said, there's a bunch of different tech solutions out there, and there's even a couple of solutions on the security awareness training front. But what do we do to protect grandma?
That's where awareness actually comes in. So look, I work for a US company and we need to sell stuff. That's bottom line. We're a commercial company. There's no shame in that. But I do feel that and that's one of the reasons I joined KnowBe4, we try to do it differently in a way that I work for the PR department, public relations. Our job is to get awareness going, awareness about the brand and awareness about security. And I think that if we teach about cybersecurity to everyone, we multiply what we need to achieve. And sure, on the one hand, we talk to customers, but we also do talks to schools or to grandma, for instance. That's part of the social part of the enterprise that we are. And I think that if you skip, as a commercial organization, if you skip those parts of society, if you don't educate kids, if you don't educate elderly people, I think you're missing out on your calling. And the calling for us really is we want to make that world a safer place. That's what we all do in cybersecurity. So the money we make, on the one hand, we invest into actually educating everybody else for free, which means we go out and talk on stages to those groups, but we also present them with free training that they can download, or a free training that organizations that help those people can download in order to educate them. That was a way that it's all about giving back in the end, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we're now at the stage that we can do that and do that very successful.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Jelle, right? I mean, grandma, for the most part, consistently seems to sort of ask for help from trusted sources, right? So if you educate the people at large, especially the children, for example, right, then that's going to be the best way to educate grandma, because there's no easy direct channels to get to grandma besides the ones that don't make any commercial sense.
Yeah, and let's also understand that their world is different than the world than the kids that we educate or the commercial companies that we educate. It's the elderly. Look, I have the mother of a good friend of mine. She's 93 years old, and her social life is on Facebook. Literally, she goes on Facebook every day and talks to friends, same age, that have a computer, but can't travel anymore, right? They're too old to travel. This is a great way to communicate. The thing is, we need to teach her, and it did take me some time, but she gets it, on how to properly use those social media networks and what not to do and what to watch out for. But now it enriches her life because she has access to technology, access to all those friends through that technology, but can do it in a safe way. They're vulnerable, definitely, and they take more attention to train and educate them, but it's also more worthwhile because one of the biggest problems that elderly people have is social isolation, right? And you can take that away through technology, but you have to make sure they do it in a safe way. So it's very rewarding, actually.
Absolutely, it's always nice to see that technology sort of make the world a better place in the way it was meant to, right? And I think that's something which Noble 4 does a little different, right? Sort of, I think there's multiple ways in educating an individual, right? And to your merit, sitting down with grandma is a great way to do it, but obviously we have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of bandwidth. And I think Noble 4's solution to that, which is, if I believe it was an in-house series called Inside Job?
The Inside Man.
Inside Man.
No, Inside.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so the idea, and this goes for everyone, doesn't matter how old you are or what you do, it's just think back to your school days. Right, you had classes which you really liked with topics that you liked, and you had classes that you hated. I hated math; it just wasn't for me. But I loved history. So that's me. Why did I love history? Well, because part of it was because the teacher we had was able to communicate in a very storytelling way. Right, storytelling is so important for us to be engaged. And the thing with training is, if you want to motivate somebody to actually do your training, if you want somebody to learn something that they might not really like, because face it, cybersecurity can be pretty dry stuff. But how do you motivate people? Well, you engage them with storytelling. And storytelling is a really good way to do that. And that's why we switched, or didn't really switch, but we offered another way of training, which is through the Inside Man, which is a television series. Basically, it's episodical, 8-minute episodes, seasons. We're now up to, I think, season 5. Is coming, is shortly being produced. So you can basically consume that training. Sure, you can do it from the comfort of your workbench at your office, but you can also do it from home. We had it up on Amazon Prime at one point, where people could literally sit down behind their TV and watch the series. And the thing with it was that it was fun, it was relevant, and it was engaging. And that's the thing I usually miss when I see security programs from companies that are like bone dry. You're irritatingly and frustratingly uninteresting. Well, if you give your audience something uninteresting, why would they want to participate, right? You don't engage with them. So we took some of the basic things that Hollywood offers us for movies, how to engage with people, how to do storytelling. We actually acquired a content creation company that was already building videos like that. And we started making a security awareness video series on that, the Inside Man. And I think that was kind of a, tipping point in the industry, actually. Because what we're seeing now is that other companies are trying to replicate this because it works. It really is fun to look at. And if it's fun, people, users, employees are starting to actually ask for it. They want to see the next show because there's a cliffhanger and they want to know what's happening next. They're engaged with the actual actors in the series. And I think that's something where we need to move to. That's something where the old way of doing things, right, is being replaced by new school awareness, the new way of educating people. And that's one of the evolutions I see in the industry.
Yeah, and to that point, I think it sort of harks on to an even wider gap, right? I was watching a little interview with Mr. Beast. Pretty sure it was a podcast, actually, and he was talking about the fact that there's so much mediocre content out there. There's literally mountains and mountains of mediocre content out there, but there is very little high quality, openly available content. And I imagine that's the case in the security sector, right? Like there's literally almost zero high quality content in the MS security sector. So ultimately, when you're creating and releasing that content, you're competing with almost nobody, and you've got a leg above everyone else, because there's a bunch of videos out there that tell you, okay, this is how MFA works, this is what to do and what not to do, but there's very few high quality production pieces of content which sort of send this message home, right? So I think that's a tipping point. Makes a lot of sense. And apart from that, storytelling is as you mentioned, extremely important. And as far as I understand, the Novo4 has been started or created by one of the sort of world's most famous hackers, as it were, right? Can you tell us a little story about your experiences with him?
Okay, so Stu Showerman is the founder and CEO of this company, and back in the day, he was looking to expand the company, and he ran into Kevin Mitnick, who you were talking about, who has the title of world's most famous hacker. And the reason he wanted Kevin to join is because we're living in a world that is, developments are incredibly quick. Both developments on the security side, but also on the cybercrime side. Cyber criminals, bad actors, can develop new tricks way quicker than we can develop our defenses against them. It's a rat race. So any leg up that you can get in that rat race as a defender helps. So Stu was thinking on a level where you went, well, if we get one of those people that truly understands how the bad guys work, doesn't mean he's a bad guy, but he does understand how that world works because he's been dealing with that for a long time. If we can get him on board as an advisor to the organization, to advise us on new and upcoming threats, new and upcoming methods of how people are being fooled and scammed, that's a great asset for us to develop content that's real time, that's actual, that's happening now. You talked about content being mediocre. Well, part of mediocre content is talking about stuff that was happening a year ago or 2 years ago. You want to be talking about what's happening now. Today, you want to be talking about things like deepfakes, because we are seeing attacks that leverage deepfakes, that have business identity compromise attacks that really fool people on another level than just email. They include voicemails in the voice of one of the people in your organization, which is, you can't distinguish it from the actual reality anymore. So you need to educate people on those new types of attacks. That's where Kevin comes in.
And that makes a lot of sense. So I think what's particularly scary about deep fakes is both on the audio and the visual side is the limited amount of data required to replicate somebody's signature, right? Like somebody's voice or somebody's facial movements, etc.
Yeah. It's so technology-wise, we've come a long way. And yes, you don't need that much data. Like 30 minutes of audio is enough to replicate somebody's voice. That being said, it is really hard to get the details right. It's the general gist of it. I can reproduce your voice fairly quickly, but getting it exactly right, getting things like dialect right, that's really hard. But as with anything, technology advances rapidly. So if you compare where we are now to, let's say a year ago, we've made great strides. That's cool for us on the good side of security, right? We can leverage it. We can leverage a lot of the technology. Even in training, we can use deep fakes, right? We can use deep fakes to create content. But the bad guys also have this technology and have unlimited resources and no regulation and compliance. So they can abuse it far more easily. And that's going to be a problem. Deepfakes, my prediction is that deepfakes will be a serious hassle for most organizations because it's really hard to combat deepfakes. There's tools out there, really good companies that have detection engines, but most of those detection engines don't work in real time. So when you are engaged through a deepfake and being scammed right now, there's nothing really that can help you. And if it is there, it costs a lot of money, it's hard and difficult to implement. And that's where the bad guys thrive, in that gray zone where there's no real solution yet.
Yeah, and the best possible detection engine at the end of the day is always going to be your brain, right? As long as it's trained in the right way, it's the cheapest, most effective tool you can train. Until then, I think it's going to have to be about 5 years till I give Beyonce a call in Jay-Z's voice and try and book a date. But until then, thank you for your time.
Look, your girlfriend will kill you. You don't do that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But until then, thank you for your time. This was an extremely interesting session, Jelle. Have a wonderful day.